Let's get the intro going. What's the deal? You already know what it is. Back this with another video to pump out to my young boys, maybe girls, but no. Today, man, we about to talk about this movie, Him, man. I seen Him yesterday, and this is gonna be a spoiler review. I'm not trying to beat around the bush. I'm not trying to, I want to say what happened in the movie. So, if you haven't seen it, go check it out, and then come back to this one. Come back to this when you're ready, so we can talk about what we seen. But yeah, I just want to give a quick little breakdown of the Him movie. I seen it yesterday. It's movie been on my radar for a while now. It's another Jordan Peele flick. He typically puts a lot of truth in plain sight things in his movies. You had Get Out, which kicked it all off. And then you had Us, which kind of went over my head, I ain't gonna lie. But I remember when I first seen Us, I seen Us in bootleg. And the movie was so dark, you couldn't even see what was going on. That was probably like the last bootleg movie I seen. But, that's neither here nor there. Then there was another one, I think it was called Up, or was it called Up? I'm not sure. It was an alien movie, though. Extraterrestrial, alien-like movie. I'm pretty sure that was a Jordan Peele flick. And now we have Him. And, Him is one of them ones, man. It's one of the ones where, off the gate, I knew it was going to be a lot of predictive programming. A lot of, again, truth in plain sight. If you look at the trailers, it's a lot of, just call it for what it is, like demonic symbolism, a lot of Christ-like imagery, which is really anti-Christ imagery. A lot of different things. So, I knew I had to check it out and see what was going on with it. So, I went and seen the movie yesterday, and, I say, Rick, if you seen the trailers, then you pretty much seen the movie. You pretty much going to see the movie just to kind of see the crazy stuff. Like if you tapped in, you a quote unquote conspiracy theorist, and you take everything for as you see as what it is. Well, really, you don't take everything you see as what it is. And in the same sense, when it comes to these movies, you kind of take it for what it is. The root, I ain't gonna say the root, but the core of your enjoyment is pretty much gonna be all of the imagery, the things that they showing that's going on behind the scenes when it comes to these athletes, a lot of the rituals and kind of weird stuff that they do, before and during their time of them being in the limelight and them having their moments of fame, right? So that's pretty much gonna be the core enjoyment that you gonna get out of the film. Is gonna be all of the different things that they expose and all of the different things that they showing. And we gonna open up with this scripture right here. This is Matthew 16:25, and it says, we just gonna go to 26. It says, "For what is a man profited if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul? Or what shall a man give in exchange for his soul?" So that's pretty much what's going on. A lot of people are exchanging their soul for the rudiments of the world, for validation, for, essentially superiority over other people for whatever reason. I also seen another movie, The Long Walk, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later because Him and The Long Walk actually got, some correlations when it comes to men these days. So, boom, we're going to start off right there. But to give us a synopsis of the movie, let's go. We just gonna go here straight to the site. This is the Him website. So boom. For those who've seen the movie, we know this is like the climax of the movie right here. But this is the main imagery that's on all of the promotional material. They got, our main character. I forgot his name. I know it started with a C. I think it's Cody. It ain't Cody for sure. It's something Kane. I think they call him Kane. But, man, what's his name? Let me look that up. That's going to bother me. Let's look that up real quick. Him, movie, cast. Cade. His name is Cade. It just came to me. Cameron Cade. Okay, boom. So this is our main character, Cameron Cade. What's going on? This movie looks super dark. Nah, it's got some stuff in there. It's got some stuff in there. I'm gonna be talking about spoilers though, so if you plan on seeing it, then you know. But like I said, I believe the promotional material. If you see a trailer, then you pretty much seen the movie. I'm not gonna lie. The trailers is basically the movie. You just seeing a bunch of weird stuff that they do behind the scenes in that realm, in the athletic, NFL, NBA, all of these different sports where they gotta have a person that's the GOAT, quote unquote, the person that they tout up as being the greatest of that field. They gotta make these people go through the different things, and that's pretty much all we seeing. So this is our main character, Cade, Cameron Cade. He was pretty much groomed early on. He was seeing football players, and he was seeing this guy, Isaiah White. I remember that. He was seeing Isaiah White, and he was seeing him basically play football, and he like, man, you know, I want to be like this when I grow up. And his father, who was, I believe, was in the military, he was on that. You know, his father was looked up to Isaiah White, and you know, he kind of groomed his son to again want to follow in his footsteps and be the next Isaiah White. And that's the thing that they do in the I ain't gonna say just football, but in the sports realm a lot. If it's somebody who has a prominent run, or if it's somebody who's, you know, just real good at what they do, basically, and they leave an impact on that sport, there's always a period once that person start ushering out or start, you know, getting older and they start getting out of their prime. You know, we looking to see who's the next person gonna be, who's the person that's gonna take up this mantle and be this person's successor. So his father from an early age was kind of indoctrinating him with, you gonna be him, you gonna be just like him, you gonna be just like him when you grow up. And you know, that was something that stuck with him. So when his father eventually passed away, you know, all he had going off his father's direction was, okay, I gotta sit up there and become this star athlete. I gotta be this person that my dad wanted me to be in order to, you know, make him proud. And these is like early stages of indoctrination, of grooming, because these guys end up having so much on their shoulders, which they don't overtly say it in the movie, but there are scenes where it's like constantly playing in his mind, his father's words, his family words, everybody counting on him, everybody banking on him to be this person that, you know, he was, you know, this mantle, they take on this mantle that he was pretty much forced into from an early age. And that's what they do. They pretty much groom you. They talk about being groomed. They talk about grooming this guy from an early age. That was actually in this scene that's on the screen right now. They were saying, you know, we groomed you for this since you was a child. And that's how the devil worked. You know, the devil is a copycat. He want to be like the Most High. His mission statement is to rise up in the heavens and be just like the Most High. So when you seeing the devil has people. When the Most High says, I knew you since you was in the womb, the devil be knowing them ones too. He be knowing who he want to corrupt from the jump. So, and they like to keep the bloodline, the wicked bloodline, you know, on the same track. So, you know, it's neither here nor there. Let's keep going though. The next picture, okay, we got Isaiah White. Now, I guess this is a good time to talk about Isaiah White as a character. This guy, he comes off very, he says it himself, he comes off very overbearing. You know, Cade is more of a tame, reserved kind of guy, and this dude seems more like the wild card, loose cannon. You know, he seems very unstable for the most part, and you know, rightfully so. You know, this dude sat up there, and they was essentially doing. I'm not going to talk about that part just yet, but he was basically putting Cade on a lot of different stuff in the industry, prepping him for a lot of different things, essentially trying to groom Cade into being him. You know, I found myself saying that a lot, and that's why it's funny that that's the movie title. You know, I'm sure that's intentional, but he literally was grooming Cade to be him. Essentially, he was trying to make Cade be who he was, and he was putting Cade through a lot of different trials and tribulations. They went to an off-grid camp where they would sit up there. They was going off grid where they was basically doing sports training and different things like that, and they was conditioning his mind, essentially breaking him down, trying to turn him into a ready vessel to inherit everything that Isaiah was leaving, and again pass it on to the next person. And they made Isaiah a pivotal part in finding his successor, essentially. Which there could be some of that, but for the most part, I'd imagine it's probably different camps, different satanic groups who are all trying to curate their next guy, right? Because if you look at LeBron and Michael Jordan, from our understanding, they don't really have a relationship. And throughout this video, we're gonna be comparing and contrasting a lot of this stuff that was going on in the movie to what's happening in real life, because they didn't just make all of this up. So, and then this poster actually says "Never meet your heroes," which is something. This dude, again, this was the guy that he looked up to. This was the guy that his dad was hyping him up to be just like. And when he met him, he like, oh, this dude is low key, a weirdo, a crash out on the low. But let's go. And again, here we go. This is kind of more imagery of Isaiah White essentially grooming Cameron. And one thing I found interesting, I'm sure a lot of people noticed, was Cameron. They never really went in depth on who attacked him early on. I guess it's up for interpretation, but I'm pretty sure it's implied that the same organization that's been stalking Isaiah, whatever, or trying to get him to, not Isaiah, that's been stalking Isaiah, that's been following him around, the same satanic group that he's kind of in close confines with. It's probably the same people that end up attacking Cade, but it's never really overtly stated. But I found it interesting that the mark in his head when he got attacked, it looked like a football. So they was like, I don't know, it was a weird thing. The mark that was affecting his brain that he got, what's that thing called? The concussion? I believe it's called a concussion. But his stitches or whatever, it made a football thing in his head. But again, man, it was crazy. So Cade was pretty much grooming Isaiah for the most part. And again, we were seeing a lot of different things transpire when they was trying to essentially get Cade to become what they call a beast. They wanted him to be a beast and have killer instinct. And this is the type of lingo that goes on in sports a lot of the time. They talk about being a killer, being cold-blooded, and all of those different types of things. But I'd imagine it is probably a lot of shock treatment, because we see this stuff on the surface. We like, damn, how is this person not feeling no kind of pressure in these moments? How did he even make a clutch shot like that, where you got thousands of people chanting, cheering, all of this stuff? Is like they don't feel nothing. They just execute. And in order for them to be on that timing where they can efficiently execute without any kind of pressure, shortcoming, emotions, feelings getting involved, is essentially they have to go through these kind of treatments. They have to be mentally like plunged. Like they got to literally plunge their brains until it's a point where you can be almost robotic. And different things like that. Isaiah was trying to tell Cade that, you can't be caught up in your girlfriend, you can't, they took his phone, they said you can't have no connections to your family. They really want you to only be focused on that sport. They want your livelihood to become that sport, because that's pretty much what you're giving your soul up to do. You're giving your soul up to do this one act, go do this first, you worry about this, then you make sure your family's straight, then you can worry about your God and your religion and all of that stuff at the bottom. That was pretty much the order that Isaiah laid out when it came to, if you want to be him, you have to prioritize football, family, then God. And the reason God is so low also because Isaiah, a lot of the times in his lingo and the way he would talk to other people and talk about other people to Cade, he propped himself up as a god. He believed he was a god. He got all of these fans cheering on him, cheering for him. It was actually a scene where throughout the movie, Isaiah kept saying, I'm about to go look at the tapes. I'm about to go look at tape. And when you hear him say you about to look at tape, typically in the sports realm, that's you looking at footage of your games or whatever to see what you can improve on, basically, or see how this team play, pick things up from other teams, whatever. You just looking at old footage. But his version of actually looking at tape was nothing but him looking into a crowd, and he was just seeing. He had a room dedicated to just watching fans cheer him on, because it's an energy harvest. It was an energy thing, and I guess this is a good time to talk about that. When it comes to energy, I don't know if y'all noticed this, but this symbol right here was actually very prominent in the film. The main area where Cade was doing his ice baths, where he was doing the sauna, where he had the girls, where everything that was going on for the most part, when he was doing the blood transfusion, that's a good time to talk about that. Yes, that was in the movie. They was doing blood transfusions. They really wanted Cameron to be him. Like, they wanted him to be Isaiah. So, and really they wanted him to be who was before Isaiah, and before that, they wanted him to be part of the Anarchy. They wanted him to be, they wanted him to be in the Luciferian Club. Long story short, they basically wanted him to get the serpent seed. That's what I'm looking for. They wanted him to become part of the serpent seed. So they was passing down this blood, and they was even doing that part here. And if you've seen this symbol in the movie and you don't know what this is, I called it. This is like a alchemy symbol, and each shape represents a different thing. I guess I'll read this real quick. In the alchemic symbolism, the triangle represents spirit, the square represents the matter, and the four elements, and the circle represents the divine or perfect holism. With the square and the triangle representing the attempts to unite the finite with the infinite through the alchemic great work to achieve spiritual perfection in the transmutation of substances like lead into gold. So this symbol is, when it comes to alchemy, which is basically witchcraft, all it is it's just transmutation. So you can turn energy into, you use energy to turn this into that, basically. And that's basically what alchemy is. And that's what they was doing. Cameron's ice bath was right in the middle of this symbol. So they was transmuting the energy from that into whatever. I ain't really think too deep about that part, but I just noticed that they was doing some kind of transmutations. They was literally doing a blood transmutation in this symbol. When they first started giving Cameron Isaiah's blood, he was right by the alchemy symbol. When he was at that party and it was a bunch of girls, they was using that sexual energy. They was transmuting that. It was all designed to get him closer and closer to, again, being a open vessel, a willing vessel, a ready vessel to essentially sell his soul and give it up completely. But some can say that his stuff was already gone, because once he was literally taking Isaiah's blood. Like, they literally was putting his blood into him. So I don't know how they trying to make it seem like he can come back, but maybe it's just because he ain't signed on the dotted lines, he's still straight. But it was a lot going on there. I also caught this imagery. That's why it's interesting that the team name that they was playing for was called the Saviors. Team name they was playing for was actually called the Saviors. And it was a scene in the movie where, it was like a Last Supper type of imagery that they was showing, but they was showing Cameron Cade as being like the Jesus Christ type figure in the film. And again, the team name was called Saviors. And Isaiah throughout the movie, was referencing himself as a God. So, again, a lot of Antichrist imagery, that's pretty much all it is. They was basically doing a lot of demonic stuff, but touting themselves up as gods and putting them in godly statutes, with godly statuses. So, whole time, that's Antichrist. if if anything you seeing that's supposed to be godly but it's clearly satanic, that person is on Antichrist timing. Like again, for example, your Kendricks. So you got people that's on that in real life. Your Kendricks with the diamond crown of thorns and all of that type of stuff. That's all Antichrist imagery. That's all Antichrist time. So, that's neither here nor there. Let's keep going though. What else we got? The GOAT. So as far as the GOAT goes, that was another thing they kept dropping. He wanted to be the GOAT. They kept calling him the GOAT. People in real life, they call each other, they want to be the GOAT. But the GOAT is connected to the Baphomet, which is also deeply connected into Satanism. We could just read this. The association of Lucifer or Satan with a goat stems from ancient pagan traditions that link goats with nature gods like Pan and their primal sexual nature and symbolism of wicked individuals. So, that's pretty much self-explanatory. But, the goat is definitely rooted into Satanism. When you look up, when you talk about the Baphomet and, the images of the beast and everything like that, it's usually a goat head. So, again, it's ironic that a lot of people, and this is the Baphomet right here, but it's ironic that a lot of people want to be, referred to as the GOAT. And the GOAT, is really stems from pride, because regardless, Christ is the only person that's really can be considered like the greatest of all time. Christ is the only one that can really be considered the greatest of all time. So anytime, people get touted up and put it on these pedestals and get to talk about, oh, I'm the GOAT, I'm the best, this, and that, it's really just all pride. And, pride comes before the fall. So, be careful of where you talk, you get to talking that quote unquote GOAT talk. Because, that's an energy that's coming from somewhere where, you feel like you gotta be the best. You gotta be better than this person, better than that person. You gotta be looking down at somebody, when the whole time everybody's equal. We all sin, we all are creatures with blemish, and we all are looking up to the only person that should be reverenced on that level is Christ. But when you get to looking for all of that validation and that stuff for yourself, you tend to get caught up. And yeah, that's what we seen in the movie. Everybody kept putting pressure on him to be the next best person. Appreciate it. I'll tap in. Yeah, they wanted him to be the next best. They wanted him to be the next best person. They wanted him to be that one. But let's see what other images we got. See what we can catch. Okay. Yeah. And this reminded me, another thing I want to go into, bro. They be sus, bro. I ain't got my soundboard, but these dudes be sus. It be a lot of, again, I'm going to reference The Long Walk too, because it be a lot of stuff in these hyper masculine situations, these men who, are in the military, they supposed to be hyper masculine, and dudes that be in sports, they supposed to be super masculine, they supposed to be on moving on this time, but it seemed like a lot of the times in these spaces, it be a lot of low-key homosexual stuff be going on, bro. It be a lot of homo stuff going on. Because even in The Long Walk, a lot of those guys were saying, like, they say little jokes like, I don't care. It's no way. It shouldn't be a joke. Like, and it's just like, we in the real world. In the real world, there should be no scenario where you telling as a grown man, you telling another grown man to, suck your meat or some little weird stuff like that. It should be no scenario where you telling another man to do that. Or you should be making jokes and getting real explicit with how you'll sit up there and do this and do that to another grown man, And that be what comes out of a person's mouth is what's in their heart. And again, the same thing for him. And this was something that a lot of people is not going to catch. This is something that they going to gloss over. But in the scene where he was actually shooting the target, where they were shooting not even a target, they were shooting real people. He had him killing people on the low, but when they was shooting the targets or whatever, he was saying, if you miss, I take your childhood. If you hit it, then you can get anything that you want. Now, a lot of people might not have caught when he said, you know, take your childhood, but your childhood is your innocence. When I hear take your innocence, that sound like, you know, he's gonna grate that person. Like that's what is giving the vibe of. That's really what it gave the vibe of. He was talking about basically taking his innocence, taking his manhood, and yeah, like he's gonna get him like that. So, and a lot of that stuff be going on in these spaces, man. A lot of that stuff, like the devil is the king of freaks. He's the freakiest. So when they on that loose, they demonic frequency, when they not serving the Most High, and you just following the devil around, that's what it comes to. I seen a post not too long ago where they like, why every time somebody get to talk about the devil, it's some gay shit. You know, pardon my language, but that's what they said verbatim. And it's like, the thing is, people don't understand that it's so much linked to a man's, like, essence when you sit up there. When you sit up there and get violated on that level, that's like, that completely, I seen something where that completely actually changes your whole brain anatomy. Like, your whole mind gets warped after you cross over on that level. Not to say you can't come back from it. You know, if you are living that type of lifestyle, you know, there is always repentance, but a lot of things physically changes, chemically changes once you cross over on that front. That's why the devil does that to people. That's why in these